Hey yo, we're back. How are you? I turn your sound on, mate.
Yeah. Feels weird to do a podcast with just you over Zoom.
I know. It's not like we're like restricted by COVID or anything like that. It's just we're just busy men.
Yeah, you're like 15 minutes away.
Yeah. Oh fuck. Yeah. Like, just playing the intro, then like I just go, hey, actually, it's been like a minute since we've done this.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
Which is like in terms of not doing it, like it sucks, but like it's good because we're busy with like going to fight shows,
Yeah,
interstate travel as well. It's like it's moving along in the right direction.
you're right. Like the last couple of weeks without podcasts, it's been like down in Melbourne for a fight show, the officials course as well.
Mm,
Yeah, so a lot going on in the scene.
yeah. Well, let's go on that vibe a little bit. Like you did the like the Muay Thai Australia officials course. Yeah, we're gonna see your boy doing some officiating. And
Yes,
tomorrow even. So I'm just
tomorrow. Yeah, I'm gonna jump in and shadow ref with Trevor. He said he's got a couple of bigger boys fighting, and he needs a real heavyweight referee, such as myself. So we'll jump into a little bit of that, but it'll be good. I've been meaning to start, um, at least starting to get a better understanding, hands on, of officiating for a little while. So I'm excited to do it. I think it'll be fun.
yeah, man. It looked really good. Like unfortunately, I couldn't go out there because I had to corner a few guys for boxing on that day. But like in terms of like the turnout for like all the participants want to actually
Mm.
be officials as well. Like it looks like a healthy new crop of judges and referees coming through.
Yeah, and look, to me, one of the most promising things about the officials course is how many active fighters are there saying that we are interested in getting involved in officiating, because realistically, not every time, but a lot of the time, it's people who are actively competing in the sport that have the most intricate understanding of the rules and regulations, or have the best kind of like a best hands-on understanding to learn the regulatory stuff. So I think for me personally, I've wanted to referee for a little while, but I thought of it as something that I would pursue after I was done fighting. I think having something else going on within the sport can be sort of difficult when you're fighting yourself. But I think it's just that sort of to keep the sport going. It's where Muay Thai is right now. The people that have to get involved in supporting it are the people that want to compete in it, and it's something I talk about on here all the time. Is that if you're involved in Muay Thai, you have to get involved in the ground level of keeping the sport going. If you want to see it grow, you can't just compete and just expect the sort of sports infrastructure to grow around you. You have to sort of be playing a few roles. That's my belief anyway. So I figured it was time to just start getting stuck in. So catch me reffing.
Dude, all the official stuff. Get your man that can do both.
Yeah, well, it's a good course though. It's run well. I've done it 4 times, so I know it pretty well now. But I've only ever done it as an observer, and this is like something I always say to fighters. But that was the other thing about this course is just about everyone who attended it was there to become an official. So a lot of active fighters and a lot of New South Wales Thai community were there as well, which is awesome because it's great to get. We have so many experienced Thais here in New South Wales. That it's good to get them involved with officiating, because generally they a lot of them do know the official side of things quite well. And shouts to Andrew Parnham, was running the whole course in English and in Thai. Like you just said, everything in 2 languages, which is pretty sick. But it's also the way that the discourse around people actually putting their hands up and asking questions was really, really good. Like some very good, productive questions and discussion points where I feel like I've been to the course a few times and people kind of sit and observe, but they don't. I know people have questions and misconceptions, and it's the best way to run one of these courses is people. I think you can't show up to one of these things um, as though you already know what's going on, because it's not. We don't as a community, and it's the best time to get Trevor. Lawler was there, and Elias Delopsis was there, as well as Andrew, as well as Singh Payak, as well as a lot of these really experienced Muay Thai officials. You've got to bring the things that if you've ever had an argument with someone in your gym about, no, this guy won the fight because of that, or no, that go on, or this is legal, that's illegal. You've got to sit down and just kind of go, hey, I was talking to someone the other week and we were arguing about this, because I find that the course is always good, but I always have this thought, like, some of you have questions, and I know you do, and people are almost apprehensive to ask because people don't want to sit down. Everyone's kind of like wants to appear knowledgeable, but it's not the point. Like, you're not running the course; it's not your course, so you don't have to know everything. You got to be able to, and even very experienced people, and like, comes back to the point I was making, is like, I love that people who are very knowledgeable, have had a lot of fights, and even guys that have been reffing would go, can I just clarify this, or oh, that's something I didn't know, because it's an evolving and a very complex art. It is an art in and of itself, officiating. So I think the sooner we all kind of realize we don't know everything, the more knowledgeable we'll become, because we'll be able to help each other a little bit more. So I thought, over the years that I've been doing this course, the approach on the kind of observer and participant side has been much better. People are a bit like taking the ego out of it and just being like, hey, I actually don't know that.
Yeah, and it's with those kind of courses as well. Like, you can't get like a better officiating team in Australia than the one that's doing the course there right now. It's like, in terms of like guys that fought at a high level, like with Simpiak and Jock and that, and then you got guys that like officiated at the highest levels, like Elias and Trevor Andrew. It's like, yeah, so if you want to get your knowledge up from that, that's definitely the course to take, and also like the guys that you want to learn under.
Yeah, and I made this point after the course. I really enjoyed it. And I made the point that in New South Wales specifically, like, one of our, best assets that we're so lucky to have access to is the officials that we have, because, we're not kind of considered one of the most advanced Muay Thai states, but we truly have like A-class officials at the top of things in Trevor and Elias. And I had a chat with Trevor after, and he said, I know we love Trevor around here.
Yeah.
And he said, like, he will go to your gym and advise and just ref some sparring and just let you jump in, like, really trying to establish those grassroots ideas of, like, if you're not ready. And a lot of people were there to become referees and admitted that they weren't comfortable with the idea of being in the ring reffing. And he said, cool, host a sparring day with your gym and I'll come and show you how to ref the sparring matches. And he said, you've got gyms such as our friends at SRG that have massive groups of people and they host big kind of just in-house sparring. Get like trainee referees involved there and just establish some officiating advice. So we've got our development days in full swing now for novice amateur competition, but we are seeing now like another entry rung below that just within the gyms, not just for the purpose of developing the fighters, but for developing new officials. So I think that's really productive. I like what Trevor and I do, and really respect their passion a lot as well, because these blokes just genuinely love Muay Thai and give a lot of their own time just to help. Trevor was also saying, like, he goes to gyms after hours just to talk about officiating. He said, if you think you don't fully understand scoring, I'll come and run a workshop for your fighters on scoring conventions and things. He's doing these things after hours. And, like, if Trevor will do it, and you think you could benefit from it, like, use what he's offering. Because I think a lot of gyms are a little bit stubborn. They think they know the way, and rather than looking at, I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, but rather than looking into what else can I learn, they look at situations as being wrong. So I think, yeah, we got to get on board. It's just communication as much as anything. I think we're at a good place in New South Wales to move forward. It's just like, what do we need to learn? Not arguing with each other, but trying to just streamline the way we get information. And that's why we need these courses, because how much hearsay do you hear about officiating? Like, someone at your gym says, no, this scores more than this. And it's just like, but where did that come from? And if someone at your gym said it that's kind of senior to you, you'll take it as fact. But we need just like a single source of truth to just be like, if you didn't hear it at the course, if you didn't hear it from the MTA, you can't confirm that it's true.
Yeah, that's true. And like, if everyone's like on a pretty similar page, it makes it a much more enjoyable experience, that you're not trying to like argue points of like, who won this one, that one from there. And like, And probably another thing as well is this, like, and we talked a bit about it before, and while you were in Melbourne, you talked to a few people. It's like, trying to get a way to educate the crowd as well,
Mm.
and it makes a much more enjoyable experience for them because they understand what's going on a bit more, and then they won't be too worried about being perplexed about, like, oh, why did that guy win? Because this
Yeah.
is how I understand it.
Yeah, and I think I've been talking to a lot of people about this, having some good, interesting conversations. Is that like when we bring people to a Muay Thai show, we're trying to like if a show sells a lot of tickets, it's not full of Muay Thai fans. If it's a massively commercially successful show, people are there to see individual fighters, but possibly not to see the sport. That's just the model that we operate on. So, like, you've got your base level of ticket sales, and that's people who genuinely love Muay Thai. But if you do really well, it's because a couple of the athletes competing generated a little bit of a crowd. But a lot of the time, what happens is whether it's people bringing a big crowd of their mates that they play footy with, or something like that, they come to see the show, but they don't understand the intricacies of how it works. And yeah, to your point, if we get like when people go to fights, a lot of the time, if they're not educated, a lot of the time it's easy, just even for the layman to just look at a fight and understand who won. But sometimes once the level goes up, it's a little bit finer, and you have to understand how the scoring actually works. And we grow the sport by helping crowds who are not familiar with Muay Thai come in to watch the sport and understand how it works, not just kind of confuse them. And what doesn't help that is if you get a fight where there's a bit of confusion in the crowd about who wins, but then even the people within the sports are arguing back and forth. Because then, like, as a fan, as a consumer, if you look at a fight and you go, I thought red won, but blue won, and then even the people within the sport that are supposed to know can't figure it out, it's not like an appealing product to watch anymore, because you go, oh, this scoring is goofy. Like, you watch a fight and you never have any idea who wins. And I think the last couple of years, I think we have everything we need in New South Wales. It's just about moving forward within the right framework, because it's been a little bit all over the place at times. But yeah, so that's why I thought the officials course was good, kind of coming back to, I guess, as fights start to kick back up again after a little year off, to see a crop of referees looking to get educated that I think will be really good officials as when the time comes. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, yeah, so we're going to catch you doing a bit of officiating tomorrow. Also,
A little bit.
and a bit of commentary as well.
Yeah, fuck, it's going to be a busy
It's a
day.
big day. I'll be in there later in the day for the amateur portion for that one. We
Yeah.
got, like, for our side, we have Levi in the development day, but it's only one trainer allowed, so everyone's taking care of that. And then
Mhm.
on the amateur portion from there, we have Cobra Kai fighting, and we have Big Knox having a go as well. So that should be good. So and then, like, yeah, it's good to, like, see a couple of us, like, super fan Jake Davis is going to be fighting on the amateur card.
Yeah, I haven't seen him fight for ages. That'll be cool.
Yeah, and there's also, like, a couple pros at the top. There's a WMC title against Dahlia and Tracy from
Yeah.
Sichitong, and Dahlia from Eight Limbs, which should be good. And then so Darren versus Sam McDowell.
Darren and Sam's a really good fight.
And
Looking forward to that.
it should be good. Like, both boys, like, have been out of the ring for a little bit from there, and so it's a great matchup. Be very very interested to see that. And then at the main card from there, which is really interesting, some that we had on the podcast before, to Warren, he's going to be up there, and he's gone through a couple opponent changes, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think as far as like, I actually think there's been more changes than this. But I think initial conversation was him to fight Jesse March. Then he was locked in versus Joe from SRG, who I'm not sure what happened to him, but he was wearing a moon boot at the officials course last week. So speedy recovery, Joe. And then, yeah, in a very random switch up only a week out, he's going to fight Simpai, which is like, I saw this come across my Facebook and I was just like, what? Because Simpai is not a 70 kilo fighter, not by any stretch of the imagination either. He's not even a massive lad at 63 kilos. A well-sized 70 kilo, like a natural 70 kilo. But also, I find this fight so intriguing, and I think it's going to be a really fun one to be a part of, because I know a lot of the Sydney Muay Thai community don't know who Tu is. It's a little bit like to see this somewhat unknown commodity in Tu come through and fight really one of the. Simpai must be the most accomplished fighter currently in fighting out of New South Wales. Absolutely a former Channel 7 champion, like a truly elite level Thai champion. But like, you can't sleep on two. Like you mentioned, we've had him on the podcast. If you want to learn a little bit about him, you can revisit that episode because he's got some stories to tell. But Tu's fought Kem Sitsong Pinong. Tu has fought Somrak Kamsing. He's had a long run fighting in sort of the heyday of Max Muay Thai when it was on Channel 8. So Tu's got a lot of experience. He's been on the shelf for a couple of years now and sort of been laying low. He's come to Australia. He's now based out of Sydney. So he's, he's just a bit of a mystery. He's from the States. He's from Chicago. He's kind of like the bulk of his career was spent in a 3 or 4 year stint in Thailand at multiple gyms and fighting on big shows against high level opposition. But then he's kind of he's been laying low. So he just sort of popped up here in Sydney fighting under sister time. But he's an elite level fighter. And, this is skill wise probably the most challenging match you could ask for in Simpayak. But it is also, there are so many interesting variables. Like Tu is a much bigger man. It's just a 3-round fight. There's a lot of things that make this really interesting. It's random, but I'm excited to see it. It's well done, Andrew, for just keeping the show moving all the time. Not easy to work with COVID and stuff at the moment, and matchups falling through. And shout out to Simpayak for just jumping in and saving the shot.
Definitely. So, like, if you're listening to this podcast, the show most likely happened from there.
Yeah, you probably heard me commentate it.
Yeah,
probably enjoyed it.
But like you tell, we're pretty excited for it. It's always good to see Simpayak back in action because before all this shit went down with COVID, we're meant to be treated on time to Sydney Simpayak versus Tyler Highcastle. Missed out on that one.
Yeah, and a lot of I think all involved parties would still like that fight to come together. I know Tyler wants to fight Singh. Can be pretty sure Singh would like to fight Tyler too. So I think that could still be one that comes around once things are moving, completely normally again. So good to see Simpayak getting back in there. I think just blowing off the dust and things like that, shaking the cobwebs is a movement towards getting these fights that we thought we were going to get, because that fight's every bit as exciting as it was however long ago it was supposed to happen. Must be a year ago now. Tyler's been back in the ring a couple of times, so get Simpayak back in there. Maybe the fight's probably even more exciting the more activity you let the guys get. So
yeah, awesome, very good. So let's just move on from that, because what we're going to do today is just a couple of breakdowns of some of the cards that we missed there. So moving like a chronological order, I'm pretty sure here, but of course, as soon as I open my phone, it goes away the page that I wanted to see. So, but not too long ago, Muay Thai Grand Prix Australia, run by Darius Dutch and Gavin Fuller, put on a stellar event. One that was headlined with a WBC international title.
2 of our former guests.
Yes.
Is that the first time a guest has fought a guest?
That's yeah, I think so.
I think it probably is.
Probably is. From there, that's that's why we don't try and do picks on these type of show, because we talk to most of these people and we like most of them as well.
I try to just generally make a rule about not picking fights my mates here either, because I don't need anyone to accuse me of being biased.
But
I am biased.
That is. So we'll talk about the main event bout also that show, because it was a great fight. It was George Mann from Riddler's Gym, WA, versus David Pennimpede from Muay Gym in Canberra. And it's what a fight. It was such a great fight. It ended up George taking decision. It was a classy performance by him. Let's talk about each of these guys, what they do, because we didn't really know what we're going to see from David, because there's just he made that gym change a while ago, so he actually had a fight under Kieran at the moment, and we were very interested to see what was going to come out from it. And really what we saw was some really good looking stuff from there. And I think for fights going on, I think you'll be able to build even further on top of that.
You hit the nail on the head. It's very interesting to watch a fight like this, because it's always a question mark when you see someone fight for the first time out of a new gym. And even more so when David set up shop with Kieran at Muay, just as we were coming into that sort of COVID period. So it ended up being maybe it must have been close to even. When did we get back? it was over a year.
Hmm.
Over a year training at Muay before he eventually got to jump in and have a go. I think his first fight at a Muay was supposed to be against Stefan, also over in WA on the same show. So a year goes by. It's not just a gym change for David; it's a whole lifestyle change. Like he moved from the Gong to Canberra, which sounds crap, but whatever. He started working in carpentry. He started working full time in Muay Thai in the gym. So a whole new kind of lifestyle, and it's always interesting to see how that kind of affects performance. But I thought it was going to be a positive move, a very different environment. And we know, maybe from the outside looking in, it's just a gym change, but you and I know very well Kieran's one of the best trainers in Australia. And his gym is really solid. He's got a great stable. And I think David never, down in Wollongong, he had good training, but he didn't have kind of like a team environment. It was very much sort of just him. So I was expecting David to look sort of very improved, and I think he really did. But it's also, it adds to kind of the complexity of that first fight that he drew a hard ass right off the bat in, world ranked George Mann, for a couple of reasons. George Mann, obviously a spectacularly skillful fighter, but also had a couple of fights back after the layoff, which David did not. So it was a very difficult ask, but David stepped up and took it. And I do think, as you said, David looked far improved technically in this fight. Like I remember even from the first kind of 2 rounds, I was watching this going, okay, David's sort of bringing something new here. And it was a good, closely contested battle. I don't think, like, if you watched George's fights with kind of like Stefan Lottering or Chris Watt, neither of those guys gave him anywhere near the amount of trouble that David did. He really had to think on his feet in this fight. David had some success, especially in kind of like moving into sort of the later rounds. Like towards the end of the 4th round, he was landing some really nice low kicks, which has always been a signature of his. I saw in David some really good improvements in timing. He's a very aggressive, very technical, but also largely a very aggressive fighter. But I saw in this fight, he was picking his shots very well. He wasn't kind of just like, wasn't just sort of pushing George back with sheer aggression. He was having a look. He was having some faith in his shot selection, trying to get the hands through, and really just trying to cover that distance with George, not get tied up. I thought this was an excellent fight. George just a little bit too savvy on the points. Just managed to sort of run David over those knees. Some really sweet trips. Controlled the clinches quite nicely. I thought this was a class fight. I've watched it a couple of times. I really enjoyed it from both sides. I thought it was. It's nice to see someone of George's skill level get a test like David can bring, because you have to see him work those gears a little bit more, and it was a real chess match. Yeah, loved it. Keen to see George again. I think George is coming into his own now that he's not cutting all the way down to 70. I've said this before. You're seeing him fill out a little bit. He's got a bit more of a midsection now, starting to drive some. I think it's helped his power. Yeah. He's still the size of a fucking skyscraper, even at 76 kilos. So it's not like height and range.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's not like height and range are a problem at the heavier weight. So I think this is a class for George. I think he's feeling the benefits. And as you said, I'm super, super excited to see David fight again now, because, you look at all these improvements and then you factor in the circumstance of the time off against an opponent who was a little bit, a bit more ring ready, like had the chance to get back in against some high level opposition. Yeah, I'm fascinated to see what comes next for David. I think Kieran's done a really good job with him. And I always loved watching David fight. I'm a big fan of his. So I enjoyed the fight. Like to see, and keen to see what happens next for George as well.
Yeah, it's like it's a hard one for him at the moment. Just like, basically it's like he's got a major scalp. David now, it's like, really proven himself in that weight class, and like he's an international champ from there. So, you think logical progressions, you think like, everyone's like going, yeah, him and Toby Smith, it makes sense.
Toby. Yeah. It's got to be Toby.
So like, and like, I don't know, does Hamza still hold the title as a world champion?
This is a funny one because the WBC does have rules about championship inactivity, and Hamza has not defended the title for a long time, but I'm not sure what happens. No one really did anything for a whole year, so I don't know if we get extensions, but yeah, Hamza does still hold the world title. Hamza would be a very good fight for George. Like, watch two two long boys. Fucking yeah, because it's like, how would Hamza deal with someone who can kind of match him for height and range, and the same can be said on the other side. That's always an interesting story when guys who get used to being a much taller, much longer fighter. But yeah, within Australia, I think, when has there ever been a contender at super middleweight that's a fascinating match for Toby Smith? It's been a long time.
Yeah,
Been a long time since we look and go, who wins? Toby's the king domestically at that weight, but George is making a good case. Like, Toby's been on the sidelines for a little while. George has been busy in that time. So I if you let me make any match in Australia right now, I think I'd make that one.
Yeah, of course. That's it. It's such an interesting matchup because like the styles are totally opposites from each other as well. And like when I saw like George in this match, for a guy his size, he knows when to stand his ground strong, but then it's so agile when he has to, get out of the way, or be like, got his kick caught a couple of times, and he just the evasion as he got his kick caught, like for the counter attack was just spot on.
Yeah, his timing, his ring awareness, and I think what I was saying to some of the guys after this fight is, I think where George is underrated is his movement, because you always hear kind of the story, and we've said this before. People talk about George being a really tall, really long fighter, and he is obviously tall and long, but he is an exceptionally intelligent fighter as well. It's not just a matter of like, he's super tall and it's impossible to deal with. Watching some of the exchanges in this fight when George is against the ropes, just these little micro adjustments he can make to his positioning. There's a couple of elements to that I find really impressive. Is his composure. Like, he's so calm. He's not bothered. He's not. You see, he often is like really under fire on the ropes, and he's just moving, biding his time, but he's not stressed. Just having a look, he's comfortable there against the ropes, and just knows exactly when to kind of just break the exchange, knows when to shoot a knee up the middle, but he can stay comfortable. He knows how to use his environment. He'll lean his head back out against the ropes, avoid strikes coming on it. He's a very defensively intelligent, and I think this is one of the best performances from him that I've seen to show that area.
Yeah, you got to showcase a lot of different skills. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's good. But like I said before, like David got to show some wing criticals as well. Like the leg kicks were good. He got in those mid ranges and like really got some really good, well timed punching counters there as well.
Yeah.
And you can still see a framework in there. So anyone's fighting George forward, there's a few things that go, that might be interesting to look at. If you're ever going to match up against him. So
enough for me in this fight as well to say I would be very interested to watch these two fight again. And I don't think George has had that many fights recently where you'd watch that and kind of come out of it feeling like a rematch would be fun. I think, let both guys go and fight again a little bit more. If you announce to me at the end of the year that the two are going to go again, there's enough to go by in that fight. And especially given the mind that Kieran is, I think that would be a really, really interesting fight. So, and I don't doubt that we'll see the two fight again. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, just quickly on the rest of this card, just a couple quick shout outs from that one. Not looking to breaking down, but you can view most of the fights now for Muay Thai Grand Prix on the go to the Facebook page. You got links there, or you go to YouTube. But fights that I really like to watch, like Chris Watt versus Riley Nasta. That was a great fight.
And a bit of a changing of the guard situation there. It was a big step up for Riley. Got cut an absolute beauty in the early going, but came back very strong. Big lad at middleweight, and fought a good fight against an elite level guy in Chris Watt.
Yeah. You also had you had two WBC state title fights. One was a super featherweight girls fight, Tiffany Lamb versus Sarah Ra. Oh, fuck, I know this. Fuck this up. Lee from Sunset Muay Thai. Sorry. So it's Tiffany Lamb took the win on that one.
How good is Tiff Lamb?
She does I always enjoy watching her fight.
Yeah, really, really good to watch. Back in WA now. Masterful performance. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah. You also had the other state title fight was super lightweight for the men's. Tim Mitchell versus Leo Nguyen.
This fight was ridiculous.
It's like, well, it's one of those. Like, they've matched before, and
Yeah.
but like I haven't seen much of Tim Mitchell, but I've seen a few of Leo's fights, and
Yeah.
yeah, you know you're gonna get a good time every time you watch it.
The fifth round of this fight, if you have only 3 minutes to watch the fights, go and watch round 5 of this title fight. It was one of the most ridiculous rounds I've ever seen. Both guys almost knocked each other out like 3 times each. In the fifth. Oh, it was absolutely ridiculous. Great fight. Respect both of those. I'm a fan of Leo Nguyen. I like his style.
Yep.
But yeah, both dudes were awesome in this.
Awesome. Let's see. Oh yeah, there was a spectacular knockout that night as well. So Damian Nelson versus Jason Scott.
That was a doozy, eh?
That was a doozy. Like, it was just well placed head kick from that one. Like,
right across the neck.
How much you can know about that one?
If you can bury a shin like across sort of the top side of the neck there, that's like an off switch.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah. And then one more shout out there, listener of the podcast, Barney Soden from Three Lions for Shannon Peak. She won her fight, so congrats to her. And thanks
Congratulations.
for listening and sending us questions to the podcast as well.
Much appreciated.
All right. So moving on from there. So another guest that we had on the podcast before, the Prince, Bonjaku, from there. He had his Prince promotions on the 8-man tournament, which was absolutely crazy. I love that. It was great. There was some it ended up being a great story in the end. There. You went down there personally, though.
I went there. Thank you very much, Prince, for having me as a guest. I very much appreciated it, to the point where I went to Melbourne to take him up on his offer. But this was what I've been finding in sort of this almost post-COVID world that we live in. You know what I mean? Like, we're in the transition. Is like, if things get normal, just go and do some shit, because you don't know. Sure. Right? Like, we're probably not there for good. And that was like, I booked this on the Thursday and I left on the Friday, because I was just like, fuck it, let's go. Yeah, and a few of my friends from elsewhere were kind of like coming down to the show, which is always like tempting to go to. But yeah, it was worth the trip to Melbourne for me. I love Melbourne anyway, but it was worth the trip to Melbourne to go to this show. Yeah, we'll just we'll get stuck into a little bit of a recap, I suppose. But we'll talk the show first, because you'll know if you saw our episode with Prince, and it's still worth a listen to. The show's gone, but you get a little bit of his background, and his mentality is like, he really is bringing a very old-fashioned, not even old-fashioned is the wrong word, like Australian kickboxing, and true kickboxing, not like Muay Thai and kickboxing as a grouping term, had a real heyday. The Melbourne Pavilion used to do sold-out shows. We had some real big stars. And it had a production value very much that is quite true to kickboxing, that we've seen in the K1 Max and things like that. And Prince is trying to bring that back. He wants to build characters, which putting on an 8-man tournament is one of the best way to build characters, because of the stories that come out of them. There's so much more going on than an individual fight when you've got guys that are going to try to do what is one of the most brutal things in sports: fight 3 times in one night. The production value was really good. He had like dances and light shows, really beautiful kind of like audiovisual setup. Like, there's screens everywhere. The graphics were nice, and he really put on a show. There's a big halftime show. There was himself and his upcoming opponent, Chris Bradford, did a little bit of a face-off in the ring. Played a pretty cool promo piece for that first, which is not something that a level of production value that you see a lot. Like, dim the lights, had all the screens in the place show promo video for him and Bradford with interviews and training footage. It was quite nicely done. And the two of them were in the ring kind of having a little bit of a face-off, which is cool. Both of those guys are characters, and it was quite fun. The crowd were getting really, really involved in it, which was awesome. And yeah, it was just cool to see, Prince is really, we saw on the show that we did with him what his kind of vision for his shows is. And I can really feel that getting delivered on. And it was something different. It was something different. I liked it. And I think his next show is looking like it's going to be bigger than this one was. He's teasing maybe going to the Melbourne Pavilion. I've been still following his live streams. They only announced or sort of confirmed fight on the card is himself and Bradford. But apparently the show's in August and he's going to release the tickets in April. And he says sales is going to dictate whether they end up in the city at the Pavilion. So the guy's got big plans. Respect what he's doing, and yeah, really enjoyed the show. I had a great night there.
Yeah, nice. And and while you're there as well, you saw saw lots of Melbourne friends there as well.
Yeah, I was just running around all over the place. Everyone was really nice to me and took me in as my friends in the Muay Thai community tend to. So, thank you, Don Miller, for letting me come to Super Fight and get some training with his boys. That was really fun. And of course, thank you to my bestie, Spring Sia, who let me come to Marshall Spirit and train with her as well and kick me in the face.
Nice times. All right, so let's talk about the 8-man itself. And man, I was watching the live stream from there, and it's it was a great night, really. It's there was no disappointing fights at all. And there's a few surprising ones, to be honest. One of the matches that really stood out for me that night was Daniel Barber versus Charlie Bubb. That was a really sweet fight back and forth. And especially when you afterwards, where Daniel Barber got on Instagram and just said going into this, I had the shittest prep ever. Being down with adrenal fatigue, couldn't actually train or do pads for any time until a week before the fight. Even it's the kind of the performance that he pulled off on that night was short as nothing spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting draw, this kind of lineup, but it was, look, I don't know. I think it was just kind of matched. I don't think there was any kind of actual draw element to it. Another reason that this was cool, none of these guys in the 8-man knew who they were fighting until they were in the ring. They brought all the 8-man fighters out to kick the night off and drew the fights. And the first fight of the night was only 5-10 minutes away. All the guys came down to him with their hands wrapped, which I thought was cool. If you were to criticize it, what you would probably say is we probably got the top end matches in the tournament in the first round. I think this bracket kind of had an A bracket and a B bracket, as tournaments tend to, if you cut it in half. So, and that's just purely on experience, not skill necessarily or anything like that. But on one half of the bracket, you had Charlie, Daniel Barber, Michael Potato, and Chane. And on the other half, you had Cody, Samad, Nasa, and Guy Coleman. I think that's two distinct brackets of experience and current status. And the way it was matched was the A guys fought and the B guys fought in the first round, which it's just personal preference. Some guys would prefer, for example, having Charlie fighting Daniel in the first round. In the spirit of a tournament, some guys would have preferred that as a semi-final or a final. But then again, the counter argument is that we guaranteed got the best, most experienced matchups we could get out of it in the first round as well. So it's just kind of what your preference is. I don't know how, and it's hard to do match an 8-man. But yeah, it was kind of the way the draw kind of panned out was, I wouldn't say there was a tremendous number of surprises. I think if there were odds on this, that reminds me, Oliver, how you owe me $100. If you were to do the odds on this, I think most people were picking Charlie to win.
Yeah.
Which he did. I think your probably second bet would have been Jaden Aynord, who ended up the silver medalist. So I think it was very entertaining. Which is cool because, it's not like there was heaps of shocks. But I think one of the other things about having the bracket the way that it was is you did kind of get some guys that we hadn't seen as much of fighting early, like that Nasser Kassab knockout in the first round over Guy Coleman. That was I think that was the first fight in the whole tournament. We're just running through the matchups as they appeared. So, first round matchup was Nasser Kassab from Victoria versus Guy Coleman, the Ibis from up in Queensland. And I think this was one of the fights in the bracket for me that it's two somewhat unknown commodities, not unknown, but at that kind of top level, it's two guys looking to break through. And Nasser is interesting because a lot of the K1 tournament, he was Muay Thai guys crossing over, but he's a true kickboxer. He comes from a Kyokushin background. Prince was speaking very highly of him when he came on the show, so I was very interested to see. He was probably the guy I was the least familiar with, and he just opened with this ultra aggressive barrage of punches and sort of this blue guy out of the water early. It was like a really kind of dramatic knockout, and sort of set the tone for the night. Did you see this one?
Yeah, I actually got back and saw it.
Yeah, crazy knockout, like to kick the tournament off. And that, to me, that's kind of the fun of tournaments. Is I didn't know as much about NASA, and now I'm looking at this going, oh shit, this is what's going to happen as he moves forward. He's obviously a super dangerous guy.
Mm-hmm. He's got the power in his hands. It's just you can tell he does have that kind of karate style, like just coming forward, might miss a shot, but keep coming through with shots to kind of help rebalance himself.
Yeah, super difficult to get a read on. So that was very interesting for me to see someone like that I hadn't had as much exposure to. And then knowing that he was going to go and get the winner of the next fight, which is Jaden Arnold and Michael Badado. Again, a very good fight. A very, a lot of people would have picked as the kind of fight that could go down into semifinals of this one, but they drew each other right off the bat. An interesting kind of like, I'll call this like on a scoring side, like a movement versus power kind of fight. Like I think Badado was very much trying to kind of confuse Jaden with this really odd rhythm that he was keeping and trying to kind of set something. Whereas Jaden, I think in the scoring parts of this fight, really just had to set his feet and land on Badado, pushed him back a little bit. So, and that set up a really interesting fight. So now we got out of our two preliminary round bouts. Now you've got, the sort of more established Jaden to fight this unknown commodity in NASA. So yeah, that's kind of like an interesting start, which brought us to maybe the fight of the night. Overall, good case for would be the Smiling Assassin Charlie Bubb versus Daniel Barber, which was interesting in its own way because Daniel is a guy who's well known, but we haven't seen a lot of him recently. Just has kind of been, well, we haven't seen a lot of anyone recently, but even before, has kind of just started to get back on the scene and made a move to start representing PTJ Muay Thai. So Andrew Parnham was in the corner there. And that's, if you were an odds maker, you would call that the toughest draw. And I would imagine a lot of people observers would have written Daniel Barber off, but he came out and took it to Charlie straight away.
Yeah.
Landed well. He gave Charlie some work, putting his hands in. A beautiful counter knee game, which I wasn't really expecting from Daniel, and was landing well. He was bruising Charlie up. But Charlie just adjusts so well. Smart, massive, agile, kind of just really started to sneak that fight back at the end of the first round, knocked Daniel down with kind of like a glancing hook. And then from there started to just kind of pick up the pace. But Daniel was never out of this fight. It was competitive the whole way through. Like I thought Daniel and Charlie was absolutely sick.
Yeah, Daniel just like he was picking like a not a bad like hook off like the closer exchanges.
Yeah.
And then like give it to Charlie as well. Like, it's like all the talent in the world and athletic and but just durable as fuck also. Like just
absolutely.
This ability to absorb and but just get and just keep coming and keep coming back was there. Yes, like that's what you want from a championship fighter.
Yeah, and the pace that Charlie keeps is just something else. Like there's no other fighter like him, especially at that size. He's always throwing something. He can fight out of both stances. He can throw knockout shots when he's seemingly in transition, and he just has this very peculiar method of just like making you feel like you're at a safe distance when you're not. And I think it's because he seems to be adjusting, and then he can really land something that floors you. I think that was kind of where this knockdown came from in the first round of Daniel. But of course, Charlie moves on, as most predicted that he would, but probably the prediction would not have been that he got given that much trouble. And there was only one more fight left, which was a local boy, Cody Jameson versus Sama Janara. This a little bit more in the vein of Guy versus NASA was kind of two of the newer guys, two of the guys that were getting the chance to show themselves for the first time in this tournament. And it was a good fight. Enjoyed it. Very, very razor close. I think it was like Cody trying to do a lot of that kind of kick and knee work, a little bit more back foot oriented, was kicking Samar's leg very well. Samar having some good success with the boxing exchanges, letting his hands go. Cody did a number on Samar's eye as this fight went on, and this was really, really close, and not even just close in round by round scoring sense. Like each round was like each exchange was really close. Like it was very difficult to give this fight to see anyone taking a significant lead. The third round, I thought what was kind of the spoiling point of this fight was a couple of low blows because it was coming down to the wire and then got disrupted by a couple of low blows. Cody got floored with a shot to the nuts a couple of times, which you never really like to see because really like the fight was there to be taken then. And I don't like to see disruptions like that. But yeah, that one went by split to some. Honestly, for me, that fight was so close that just go the fucking extra round.
Yeah, well, there was the option, wasn't there, that night? Yeah.
True K1 8-man style. I feel like obviously you've got to score the fights round by round. To me, I don't think anyone in the place had a clear win for that fight. Like I don't think that fight was a robbery.
Yeah.
I see an argument. I mean, I haven't sat down and scored it, so I probably shouldn't say too much. But in being there, I just was like, it was like one of those ones. It was
even just off an initial look, like you could. I was just there going, yeah. It's like I think when I was thinking, I go maybe Cody from that one, and then when someone else I go, yeah, that's fine as well.
Yeah. Like I was leaning Cody's way, but I'm probably biased as like a Sydney sider in the house, so I probably shouldn't really say who I was picking. But also, like I was leaning Cody's way because the last round was very close. Cody was finishing pretty strong, and he got fouled really badly twice, which will kind of tip it back, his way. I mean, I don't know how kickboxing scored. Where I come from, that's the last thing on the scoring criteria is who fouled. Kind of serves as a bit of a tiebreaker. But to me, I think you've got to score round by round, obviously. But I think in a K1 tournament like that, if it's so close, you're not sure. One more round. That's the drama of the K1 tournament.
It's within the rules, and that's what everyone knows. Like if it's like a draw, we go extra round.
Like I know the extra round exists for when it's scored a draw, but like I think we should sometimes if you're the judge and you've got a winner like 29-28, but you're like, this is a tournament, there's a lot of money on the line, like I'm not really sure about this. I think you should just be able to nominate, I want one more round, I'm not sure. I think that'd be cool because like that's what we didn't see. That was like the thing missing from the tournament drama is anyone have to go on extra round. I was hoping we'd get one.
You know what you do? It's like, when you hit the read out the scorecards, then Prince should just jump and goes, no, extra round. No. He just like vetoes everything.
That would actually be pretty cool. And I have no idea who sanctioned this. So you could probably just do it. But so that set the semi-final brackets as Jaden versus Nasser and Charlie versus Samad. And to me, in terms of like experience and stuff like that, like Charlie versus Samad was probably one of I think if you were to set odds for every fight, just based on experience, that would probably be the most lopsided one. Like that's one of those fights where you go, okay, that's like the top seed versus one of the unknowns. So that's always interesting to see because that's where tournament drama comes from, is people getting massive steps up in fights. So the semi-final round of this on both ends was absolutely brutal. Jaden fought Nasser first, and you could see Nasser just has this bizarre timing about him. He's very bouncy. Like we said, comes from that Kyokushin background and was kind of just smothering Jaden a lot. And you can see Jaden, not getting like damaged a lot, but just sort of reading, like trying to just see what he kind of had to do. Like difficult to understand where to fight Nasser because he was so mobile. And then he obviously figured it out because in the second round, like he kind of just retreated slightly back to the corner and then Nasser very much has that blitzing style. So Jaden sat himself back in the corner, Nasser blitzed forward and then just absolutely uncork a counter across and this one of those brutal KOs of the night.
It's gross. But like it's even like you could see in the first round, like, Jaden just get himself in like a little bit weird spots, like, turning down like that when the smothering happening. But he also has like, I think in the first round he got the initial knockdown. He's just got the step back, unload the right cross timing, and it's like man, like, and then when he really timed it down in that second round, it was brutal. He just like
Yeah,
bent him in half. That's how like NASA felt.
did. And I believe NASA pulled up okay, but this is one of those ones that, like, in the aftermath, it's pretty. I mean, we watched fights for a long time, but I don't think you ever get used to that. Like, he didn't get up for a really long time. Yeah, got folded. Like, even they were trying to just sort of get him up for the decision, and he was down. I think he maybe even got stretchered. So hoping he's doing well now, because he had a good, very strong performance early, and then stepped up and fought one of the top seeds, guy much more experienced than him second. So fair play to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hope he pulled up well. So that punched Jaden's to get to the final, and we had Charlie versus Samad to sort out. This was another one. I think Samad had like quite a difficult fight in that back and forth sort of war with Cody, and Charlie took the first round kind of slow. I thought was kind of trying to conserve, because he had quite a brutal fight against Barber as well. So that's that tournament strategy game. Had to kind of keep himself well enough to go again one more time. And you could sort of see over the course of a slightly slower first round, Charlie just identified that Samad's leg was a little bit hurt, and in the second round just absolutely went for it. Samad couldn't answer the count, and Charlie punched his ticket to a rematch with Jaden. The two fought a year and a bit ago, and was supposed to actually fight again in December, but Jaden got hurt, so it was kind of like a rematch. Sometime in the making, and I think when they ended up on opposite ends of the bracket as well, it seemed very likely that the two would meet in the finals.
Yeah,
great fight to finish things off, because like both guys were obviously pretty weathered coming into a finals fight, and you could see like the last time these two fought, Charlie stunned and knocked out Jaden quite early. They had a good back and forth war. Charlie just a little bit quicker off the mark, landed with a bit more volume. Really did a good job of kind of stun and piece Jaden's legs and body, just really kind of like freeze him there in the ring, and then just ran away with it. And the smiling assassin Charlie Bubb, the orange boy, took the 20 grand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was a good fight. You could see by the end though, like, it was very hands heavy by both boys, because you feel pretty smashed.
Yeah.
by the third fight.
Yeah, but really good tournament, good performances by Charlie. I think we've got to get something sort of international for Charlie next. I think he would have, if things were normal. I think he's ready for anything really. I think there's a very serious argument that Charlie Bubb's the best light heavyweight in the world. He just needs a chance to prove it. And I was talking to his trainers and him the day after this, and they all kind of just agree. It's not a matter of, who Charlie is. It's just the opportunity to prove it. They just need an opportunity. I don't know where he goes, one championship, or can really do anything. He's a superstar. The bloke's an absolute superstar.
No, definitely. Yeah, just hopefully soon, like, he just get something really substantial. Yeah, they really showcase it on more of an international scene. Definitely.
Yeah, and there was talk of Lion Fight. I think there's good fights there, but I think there's better for Charlie, to be honest. I want to see him in one championship. I know he's got some plans to go over to MMA as well. I think one championship maybe is the best place for him to transition, because he can go there and follow a Muay Thai or a kickboxing world title, and then still kind of hop over to MMA under the one umbrella. But yeah, I think Charlie Bubb can do anything. I'm a huge fan. He's an absolute legend.
He's training with all the right people as well. So
yeah, a big fan of a lot of the guys in that tournament. Big Jay Naynord fan as well. Of course, other friends through the bracket, such as Cody and stuff like that. I think, a good talent-rich bracket. Everyone gave a very good account of themselves. And not the most populous weight class in Australia, so good to see guys really coming forward and presenting themselves as the contenders there. So, yeah, looking forward to see anyone in that fight again. I thought it was a great night. Well done, Prince. And, yeah, good tournament.
And Prince, like you said, like the tournament might be a thing. Like, so, different weight classes, which would be
said you've got plans to do some more. It would be good to see, like, you got the Rebellion 8-man is one of my favorite combat sports contests ever. And I know I always am a big fan of kickboxing Grand Prix, because of that's what the sport's built on from the K1 days. So I'd like to see a regular sort of kickboxing 8-man too. I think that's exciting.
Awesome. All right, cool. I think that'll do us for today, mate. That one, because you have to go back to work yourself, busy man, and I have to do shit as well. But like, yeah, it's good to be back on the mics again as well. It's been a little while, so hopefully we can go back to our original scheduling. Got a few good, awesome guests lined up as well. So stay tuned, guys. So remember, like, share all the good shit if you like. If you want to keep listening to us, share it to your friends. Okay, guys.
If you pay for a subscription, I'll unblur my bedroom.
you get a glimpse into Donald lifestyle.
Yeah.
Only
a window into my life.
All right, let me show you here. Okay, so catch you next time. See ya.
See ya.